Hi everyone, my name is Gabriela Rubio, and I'm going to be presenting on the effects of emotion on memory and how it can cause distortions and recalls of false memory. So the first article I'm going to be analyzing is negative emotion increases false memory for person and action conjunctions. And so for the Article 1 theories, the authors hypothesize that individuals seen only in friendly contexts can be falsely remembered as having participated in emotionally negative events. And also, emotion plays a role in making false memories. And so the experiment that was done was to see if emotion affects the binding processes in memory, and eyewitness accounts are often mistaken for someone else. And we can also see that individuals seen in neutral contexts can be mistaken for someone else as well. So this would account for an eyewitness to a crime may make a mistake by having seen the crime committed by an innocent person who they encountered earlier throughout the day or later in a neutral context. And for the participants for this article, we saw that there were 81 undergraduate psychology students attending Florida Atlantic University. And here they viewed 81 encoding videos and were asked to remember the actions in the video as well as the performers in the video. And so within these videos, there was consisting of negatively valenced, conjunction, and neutral videos. So emotional valence would be described to the extent whether an emotion is positive, negative, or neutral. And then conjunction would be referred to as the measure of a participant's ability to bind the actions of the actor with the performance that they were doing, and also involved a person seeing earlier now performing an action that had previously been performed by someone else. And so they were shown videos 1 week, and then a week later, they were shown more videos with some old ones being shown as well as new ones being introduced the second time around. So the independent variable would be emotional valence, so neutral versus negative, and then item type would be old action versus conjunction versus new action. And our dependent variable would be yes responses to different types of recognition items and ratings of confidence judgments. And this was a within subjects design. So the results for Article 1 are here. So in the first graph, we see the proportion of yes responses here, and then the old conjunction type, item type, and new action, like the recognition items. And here we have the negative and neutral emotional valence. So we see that participants were significantly more likely to falsely recognize conjunction items involving negative emotional valence than those that were neutral. So participants remembered emotional actions better than neutral actions, but they did have greater difficulty remembering which people had performed emotional actions than at remembering which people had performed neutral actions. And then graph 2, we see proportion of yes responses on this axis, and then we have the negative versus the neutral actors context at encoding. So the familiar negative action performed by the wrong person thus led to a greater increase in the rate of false recognition than did a familiar neutral action. Again, this suggests that participants remembered emotional actions especially well, but had difficulty remembering which people had performed those actions. And then for the discussion, we see that for this article, they remembered negatively valence actions especially well, but they still had difficulty remembering the people who were performing those specific actions. And participants were thus likely to falsely recognize conjunction items involving negative emotional valence. And although emotion appears to yield heightened memory for actions, the results actually don't provide any evidence that emotion facilitates the binding of action information. So that's the conclusion that the authors came up with. And then so the next article I'm going to be analyzing is inferential false memories for emotional events in older adults. And then for the theories for Article 2, the authors hypothesized that emotional events typically are associated with fewer false memories. And then they brought up the distinctiveness hypothesis. So this is the underlying hypothesis, is that emotional material may draw special attention, which would create more like enhanced specificity. So they would be able to remember certain events better because it's like distinct in their memory. And they also had other theories such as, memory performance declines with age, and also socio-emotional selectivity theory. So that hypothesis is that false memory generally increases with aging because while the other reconstructive and semantic processes are intact, um, there might be like issues overall with their aging. So with this socio-emotional selectivity theory, we can assume that older adults would regulate their emotions differently from younger adults, and they would prefer to focus more on the positive than the negative information, since they are like reaching the end of their lifetime and they want to focus on more of the positive outlook. And then they perceive like a time restraint on their life expectancy, so they would want to see uh, more of the positive memories and create those positive memories that they can remember. And also, false recognitions were reported and compared to younger adults' performance in this specific experiment. And then for Article 2 participants, there were 67 older adults within the ranges of 65 to 89 presented with a series of scripted photos. And they used a false memory paradigm to be able to determine causal errors to test for emotional false memory. So there were shown 9 scripted events with 21 photographs, each consisting of 14 photos of the actual event, as well as 1 neutral, 1 negative high arousal, 1 positive, um, 1 negative high arousal, 1 positive high arousal, and then each composed by 2 photographs. So we see the example to the right, like some of the examples that they would have shown the participants, plus a common ending photo showing only the scenery. And then when they describe causal errors, as I described previously, it would just be referred to as stemming from episodic or like the recollection-based processes. And so they were tested with 15-minute interval with filler tasks, and then the independent variable would be neutral, negative, and the positive arousal, and then the dependent variable would be yes responses to recognition. And then here are the results for Article 2. So we see that there was strong evidence of an effect of valence on causal errors, indicating that the intercept is higher in the elderly than previously observed in younger adults. So we see here that the specific letters and the colors would correlate to the neutral, the negative valence, and the positive as well for this axis, and then the probability of causal error. And it just shows the different types of information that they were able to find. And then for the Article 2 discussion, we see that emotionality affects the probability of committing inference-based causal errors in older adults, and the overall higher probability of false memory occurs more in older adults, and emotional memory may remain relatively protected against distortion.